All right, it's 10 a.m. Welcome everyone that have joined. This is an insider masterclass regarding the diverse carrier landscape and how to navigate it like a pro. With me this morning, I have Katie Vogt from Ascendia, Timur Iligulashvili from Logistics Remix, Rathna Sharad from Flavor Cloud, and me, your favorite host, Jerry Dixon from ProShip. This morning, you will hear us talk about the big picture, volatility and technology insights, managing carrier risk, finding success. We'll have some tips in our closing thoughts, and at the end, we'll have Q&A, and we hope to get in as many questions as possible. So a little bit of housekeeping, though. Let me go back just a little bit. On your GoToWebinar, you'll see some icons. If you see the little question mark icon, that's to submit a question to us. There's a handout icon. You can download some handouts, and also that little full screen icon if you get tired of seeing us itty bitty. So while we are waiting for everyone to join, Katie is going to do some polls for us. If everyone will take a look at their screen and answer the polls, we would appreciate it. Have you encountered challenges in expanding your customer base internationally due to carrier limitations? Poll in progress right now is showing 35% yes, 40% no, 25% unsure. So not too much of a concern, it doesn't seem, with everyone here anyway. And the next poll is, have you encountered challenges in expanding your customer base? Oh, well, I'm sorry. Those are the results. Yes is 38%. No is 38%. Unsure is 25%. That's interesting, Timur.
I'd say 38% yeses is probably worth, taking as yeah, there are challenges, but I think Rathna will probably be the right expert on international here. What do you think there?
Yeah, I'm actually surprised with the no, Timur. It's so why do they feel that that's why is it working, why is it not? I guess would be good to dig in.
Oh yeah.
Here's the next one. When evaluating carriers, which factor is most critical to your decision making? Shipping cost, service quality, carrier reliability, technology and features. I would say carrier reliability too. Looks like so far it's neck and neck with shipping cost. Technology and features low too. There's the results. Shipping cost 30%, service quality 26%, carrier reliability 39%.
That actually makes sense.
Right.
Yeah, it definitely does. Rings true with what we're seeing right now.
If you are just joining us, we are rolling through some poll questions before we get started. Here's our third one. Do you currently handle international shipments as part of your supply chain operations? Whopping yes. Well, I'm so glad there's a 0% unsure so far.
That's
and
awesome.
Yeah. And last one, for international shipping, how often do you partner with region or country expert partners or carriers? Frequently, occasionally, rarely, never. Oh. Again, if you're just joining us, we were rolling through some poll questions to allow more people to log in. And there's our last poll answer. Occasionally is the big winner.
Yeah.
Okay. Well then. We'll just jump on into the big picture, volatility and technology. But before we do, I'd like to introduce a little more in detail our guests today. They have experience, they have knowledge, they have tips for me and for shippers out there and for people in the technology sector to help shippers. So Timur, will you please introduce yourself and tell us more about who you are and what you do?
Thanks, Jerry. Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Timur Eliguashvili. I'm the founder and president of Logistics Remix. We help retailers and 3PLs bring new last mile delivery providers into their network to save on cost, improve delivery performance, and ultimately drive mutual success. Previously to starting Logistics Remix, I was vice president of sales at Lone Star Overnight, a regional carrier in South Central US, and overall have 20 years experience in the logistics space.
Thank you so much, and I'm glad you're here. Rathna Sharad, will you please introduce yourself and tell us more about what you do?
Yeah, hey everyone, great to be here. My name is Rathna Sharad. I am the founder and CEO of FlavorCloud. We enable shippers and 3PLs to go global, so make international shipping easy across shipping, customs, and trade compliance. My background is about 25 years in the cross-border space, working with carriers, forwarders, 3PLs in my prior life, and then running international marketplaces and e-commerce, as well as stint at Microsoft running ad platforms enabling e-commerce. So a wide variety of experience that really culminated into what we do at FlavorCloud. Excited to chat today about what we're seeing.
Thank you so much for joining us. I met Rathna and Timur this year, and I've enjoyed conversations with them over the past few months, and I'm so happy that you're here. And one of my old friends is here, Katie Vogt. Will you introduce yourself and tell everyone what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Jerry. So Katie Vogt, I'm the IT director for Ascendia USA. So I've been in the industry for 10 years. Ascendia is a US-based shipping company. We're helping our retailers really ship their parcels from the US outbound to their international destinations. So whether that's mail or parcel, my background, so I started my career focused on enterprise integrations, onboardings, and really excited to be here, Jerry. Thanks for having us.
Thank you. So for anyone that has never seen a Pros Who Know webinar, we spend a few days every October and have roundtable discussions. And this specific roundtable webinar, we wanted to bring in these three thought leaders. They're from different segments, carriers, leadership, experts in shipping technology and sales, and partnership management. Each member of this panel has tenured knowledge and relatable experience, and we hope this roundtable discussion offers some insight into how you can manage your carrier platform and find success in your logistics strategy, especially during peak. Speaking of peak, where are we now? We have discussed before how it's not just about diversification, it's about rationalization. Thank you, Dean Mills from T-Force, for giving us that that word. And many shipping experts and economists are predicting a soft peak season. They're saying we've plateaued. There are high inventory levels. There's lower spending. And LTL switching to TL and all of these new things that are happening due to costs. So we want to know what's up. Does anybody have any predictions? Timur, what are you seeing domestically? And in contrast, Rathna and Katie, can you follow up on Timur's take with your take on international?
Jerry, I mean, it's a timely question, right? We're here end of October. We're heading into peak season. Domestically, I would say all signs point to there being enough capacity to handle the volume going into peak. We're seeing is carriers are continuing to onboard new customers, even in October, right? Which was kind of unprecedented a couple of years ago, where carriers would set very hard cutoff dates well before October for customers to come on board prior to peak season to be able to integrate and test and ramp up. And you know, in the market generally, the demand has dropped off. I mean, we see it in the national carrier quarterly earnings releases, right, where they're showing their volumes down year over year. There's uncertainty with the consumer, you know, as it relates to spending, debt, things like college loan repayments restarting, and just generally we're just seeing slower growth than the last couple of years in e-commerce. And you know, how I would summarize the situation right now, we're really in a shipper's market. And as such, you know, the shippers, the retailers, the ones that are in charge of their parcel spend, they're basically in the driver's seat.
Yeah, to contrast that, I would say on the international side, and this kind of happened post-COVID. Again, we saw that happen with the recession last year. I think domestic softness is typically offset by shippers with international. So we've seen that trend continue. So we're actually looking at, I mean, through the year, we've had about 2x increase year over year in volume. So international has seen steady growth, and we believe that we'll see what we saw last year, which was about 2 to 3x. And that combined with a slightly different trend that we're seeing, and that started this year, and that is omni-channel. So there's a lot of B2B enablement from an international perspective that's happening across the board, across shippers. And so those are kind of the trends that we're seeing.
Yeah, and I think, Jerry, you know, just to echo what Timur was saying as far as this being a retailer's opportunity and the seller's market, but we're seeing that for a carrier that our customers are looking for the best rates, where integration might not have been something that we were concerned with heading into peak. Well, now our customers want to make sure that they have the best rate heading into peak. Our customers mostly are in fact shipping internationally, but they do also have domestic volume. So trying to see where they can compensate on either side of the fence there. And also we're seeing, again, our customers are looking for competition as far as what type of things that we're actually going to be offering. So a creative solution, Rathna mentioned B2B, that's definitely something where really before this year, we wouldn't have been having conversations with customers about a new solution heading into peak. But right now, that seems to be the only way that we're looking to increase our peak volumes this year.
The volumes are down internationally, and you're seeing customers become more competitive, right?
Exactly.
So regarding volatility and technology insights, there is volatility in the carrier market. We've seen some major players go away, and we've seen some of the new carriers come out strong during the pandemic, and they're starting to struggle. What helps a carrier have staying power in an industry that often has volatility? Rafna?
Yeah, this is for international, more so than domestic, the fragmentation is immense. And so there's, there's no single carrier that's going to be great at every commodity, every weight break, every country, every, type of value of goods and so on. There's 15 different characteristics that we look at across our network. One of the things we do at FlavorCloud is we're the largest cross-border network of carriers. So the importance there is building resilience and redundancy in a supply chain, especially when it comes to international, whether it's things like war or COVID or other external factors, or it could be something as specific as carriers come and go, their capabilities, performance over time. We see that, change significantly. And so continuously evaluating and producing the best results real time and measuring that is something that is critical, and that's what we do through the platform, so that the shipper doesn't need to worry about service issues. The bottom line is great service, easy for international. It's also about how do you handle clearance, whether it's exporting or importing or complying with all of the regulatory changes that are continuously happening in the landscape. So there are varying degrees of capability as it relates to international. So real-time understanding and measuring and picking the best options alongside having great rates. Obviously, that is a bar. Cost versus service is always a factor, and having choice is the final thing I will say. Consumers really want choice. It's not about a single service level. So is it about 3-day delivery or 5-day because I want that for the holidays? Or it could be, I'm okay with 10 days, willing to pay less. I want to pay less, and I don't mind the longer transit time. So those are the types of factors that we look at, and shippers are looking at in making those decisions.
Timur, you mentioned in one of our earlier conversations about how the pandemic affected and can affect these players.
Yeah, that's right. It wasn't that long ago, right, that we heard Carol Tomei of UPS state that they had a demand for 5 billion more packages per day that they could handle, right? That wasn't really too long ago. But in that same pandemic, volumes grew 50%. So fast that demand outpaced capacity, and that really fueled the emergence of new carriers, right? Entering the market, or existing carriers that just repositioned themselves as providers for e-commerce delivery. And there was a lot of diversion of volume, right? There was no choice. Retailers had to find options. They had to get packages off the dock, and they had to deliver the orders that were being placed. And so we saw a lot of volume move away from nationals, move to regionals, alternative providers, and we saw a lot of growth in just in carrier, I guess, rationalization. I'll use your words, Jerry. I'll steal your words there. Now we're seeing demand go the other way, right? Demand growth is contracting, but the competition is still there. The options are still there, and it's greater than it ever was. So carriers, I think, it's a volatile market, and carriers have to get more creative, right? So what they need to do? Well, for one, they need to lead with high performing services. We saw it on the poll, right? That was the #1 item. Everyone said service reliability, right? I think it was at 39%. That was important. Two, they need to think about automation, right? Can't do things the same way they did it 10, 20 years ago. So how do they automate and streamline and save on cost? And thirdly, I would say thinking about really forming strategic partnerships that are going to bring value add to their customers, right? We're seeing that with some regional carriers that are forming partnerships where they're coming together and collaborating on business and expanding their service territory. So I think partnerships are going to play a key role going forward for anyone to survive and thrive in this volatile market.
Katie, it's not one size fits all, is it?
No, it's certainly not. So I think just to echo what Timur and Rafna both said, what we're trying to see is just an informed carrier. So do you have a carrier who's informed of the things that are up and coming? Do you have a carrier who's going to be able to help and guide you through some of the upheaval in the industry, whether that's a strike like there was last year with Royal Mail, where you had thousands of packages sitting in parking lots and warehouses waiting to move. You need to have a carrier who's going to have a flexible solution, who's going to be upfront with you, let you know that these things are coming so that you can prepare internally, let your customers know that they might see a delay, whatever the case might be. But the idea is making sure you're combining everything that we've just mentioned. So creativity, being informed, flexibility, and then also making sure that that relationship and partnership that you have with your carrier is something that's strong, because you can get through a mistake, you can get through a hard time, but if you don't have transparency and good communication with your carriers, then it's never a good situation on either side.
It's true. As far as trends to note in supply chain and transportation industry, the latest technology is always important. What should shippers and carriers be paying attention to, or what do they don't know? Tell us what we don't know. Rafna, what should shippers and carriers be paying attention to?
Yeah, I'd say in terms of trends that we're seeing, AI is certainly a big aspect of automation, is the way I would look at it. End of the day, it is about taking something that is so manual, error prone, and antiquated with international. There's a lot of different aspects of it that still is not automated. So thinking about how AI can actually accelerate the automation in those areas is how I would see it. We employ AI, for example, in different aspects, like whether it's classification of commodities or it is the routing intelligence on understanding the performance of carriers and how do you pick the right carrier, or making choices on calculation of landed costs and automation of paperwork and so on. So there's many different facets where this technology, and there's AI, we've been working on it many years before ChatGPT, but in general, employing these capabilities and automating an industry is what's most fascinating. And therefore, once you get a solution provider that can do those things for you, it's no longer, you're de-risking your international sales. Essentially, all of the trade compliance aspects and the regulatory aspects are de-risked, which is very exciting. The second trend I will talk about is data. And if you're not data-driven as a shipper and how you're thinking about international growth, you should be. It's really about thinking about it in a similar vein, I would say, as domestic, and, thinking about conversion optimization, what are strategies you could employ, and having a data-driven approach, just like you would for domestic. We do a lot of things to aid that in terms of AI-based recommendations and so on. But in general, I'd say looking at being data-driven is important for shippers.
Timur, what do you think? What was something about pictures that was so simple, but yet so important, and we all use it. We all need it. What was that?
Yeah, listen, so I kind of come back to the basics. I think a picture says 1,000 words, and in the last mile delivery, I think a lot of our guests here will know that that picture I'm referring to is a picture POD, proof of delivery. And that's a photo taken by a delivery driver using their smartphone when they drop off a package. So it's just a visual confirmation of the package's delivery location, be it at the doorstep or porch, just exactly where the driver left it as proof of delivery. So when you think about it, why is that useful? Well, for one, if a carrier's customer service rep gets a call asking about the status of that delivery, well, if they have that confirmation, they can just simply pull it up and use it as a secondary verification. So some carriers, as you know, have been doing it for a while. Again, going back to the basics, and some haven't. FedEx recently implemented it, for example, and I think what was really notable that I read was at FedEx, and when they launched this, I think a year or two ago, the picture POD led to a 14% reduction in disputed delivery claims. And also the other stat they mentioned was it led to a 17% reduction in call volumes at their US call centers, right? So think about like just the amount of cost and time they're saving. Really something so basic, right? That I think has become table stakes for every last mile delivery provider in the industry has such a great impact. So I would just say, you know, anything that that you think about in your business that can be basic, that can have a major impact on operations, like go figure out, go build a business case, implement that technology that's going to help you move the needle.
Yeah, Jerry, on our side, the data integrity has been a really big topic since 2020 with the EU regulations, Brexit. We're seeing a big investment from customers and just the importance of customers having quality data. So understanding what are my HS classifications, to Rafna's point, as far as duty and tax calculation, not so much how can I just get that duty and tax calculation, but how do I incorporate that into my checkout so that my customer, when they're shopping on our site, has one fully landed cost. They're not surprised when they get their package that there is a fee they weren't expecting. Also, just carrier restrictions. So if there's a customs restriction, you can't ship an item, whatever the case might be, making sure that you have an understanding of that data, what those requirements might be, working with the carrier, and then making sure that you're able to provide your end recipient with a experience that matches what you ultimately can support.
Katie, how has that technology helped to shape the carrier landscape?
Yeah, so on 10 years ago, the conversation as far as a carrier being a software company, that was really not in the same realm. But with the shipping platforms and shipping partners that we've worked with the way that the industry's changed, such as picture PODs. So as a carrier, you have to make sure that you're keeping up with the trends, the needs of the customers. You have to be able to provide them with that picture. You have to be able to provide them with that experience of you're unable to ship these items, you can't print a label. The visibility when it comes to tracking transits. Portals as far as a customer use case, packages being on hold. Our customers, we live in such a data-driven society and everything is instant and right now. Customers don't want to wait 3 days to find out that their package was on hold because of a bad barcode. They want to be able to see that now, they want to be able to action it now, and they should be able to action it now because the data is there. It's just making sure from a carrier perspective, a big shift over the last couple of years, you have to be able to provide it, support it, and then make sure that you're executing that on a day-to-day and constantly improving and keeping up.
Thank you for that. We're going to move on to managing carriers and the risk rewards and how to grow your network. And get over here. So when it comes to assessing risks and rewards with different carrier types, what are some tips for, again, shippers and also the carriers? Give us some tips to assess risks and identify rewards. Timur, could you expand on the domestic piece, and then I'll let Rafna and Katie expand on the international piece.
Yeah, sure. Well, I think when someone's adding a new carrier provider, I think it's really important to understand the key factors, right? What are the key factors involved that can help minimize the risk and maximize the rewards, right? So that includes, the key factors include things like understanding the rate card, right? Truly understanding it, understanding accessorial charges, understanding the coverage and claims process, understanding transit times and promised performance levels. So really having a comprehensive understanding of the carrier's operations, how they're going to invoice you, what charges you could get hit with, is really critical to the entire process of onboarding a new carrier. And one thing I would add is when bringing on a new partner, a new carrier to your network, I highly recommend always running a test. So testing the integration, I think, is critical. Testing some shipments, testing invoices, making sure that you're auditing and ensuring that rates and accessorial charges and fuel surcharges are matching up to what you would expect. Have a ramp up plan in place as well. Don't just try to throw all your volume at once, but just have a methodical ramp up plan that the carrier agrees to, and try to identify issues as early as possible in the process. Look, I mean, things can snowball really fast if you're rushing into it. And so, let's not snowball, let anything cause those small issues grow into big issues. Gotta make sure you have a plan in place whenever onboarding a new carrier.
So I'll jump in here on the international side of this. I would look at it from two perspectives, assuming this is e-commerce shippers. There's a checkout component to this. So essentially making sure that you're optimizing for conversions, for international conversions in the checkout. So what does that choice look like for your customers? Essentially, is it more than one type of service, so an express and a standard or an economy type of service? What is the expectation around transit times for that? And also the rates are a very critical component there for conversion. If the shipping costs are too high, 40% of drop-offs happen at the checkout because of shipping rates. Not having enough of a choice and just having one option is also a factor for conversions, especially around the holidays. There's more reason to have a wider choice. So outside of that, the most critical components for international are also understanding, is it guaranteed delivery duties paid? So that means there is a full assessment of understanding commodity codes, understanding country of origin for trade, understanding all of that. So your partner, your service provider should be able to address that and provide a fully guaranteed landed cost so that you can actually have a great conversion experience. So sales are won or lost in the checkout, and it's super important to have that upfront. And then in the back end, it's more about operational efficiency, whether it's your 3PL or your own warehouse, ensuring that it's an end-to-end from the time of pickup at the warehouse to the consumer door. There's complete tracking, and that's where the performance promise here comes in. Just as Timur mentioned, for domestic, it's all of those. Does it meet the SLA, the transit times, and the performance, and is it predictable in terms of the rates that were provided at checkout versus what you're charging the end consumer? They should not have any surprises, especially that's why the guaranteed landed cost and the DDP, the delivery duties paid, is very exciting for consumers as well as brands. But also ensuring that there are no surprises. Surcharges can be a beast. Not understanding the rate cards is, or the type of service that's being provided, and having any kind of surprises at all all is terrible for unit economics. So making sure that that can be predictable. So the end-to-end, it touches upon a lot of things for domestic, but I would add customs clearance and the complexity of international weighs in significantly. So it's not just about that shipping rate, it's about all of these components.
Yeah, and I think just to, touch on the not a one size fits all. So I think it's really important to understand what your needs are, as a retailer, as a business. What am I looking to accomplish? So you can have a carrier that's great with expedited shipping, great with delivery duties paid. But if you're looking for, somebody who's going to be able to help you with your niche market and be able to help you with an undeliverable process or claims, whatever your need is as a business, it's important to understand that as you're trying to assess these risks versus rewards, because oftentimes with so many options, whether it's from time in transit, tracking options, you can be buried with too many options, not understanding what your focus is, and then being unable to really communicate where you need to be and unsure where you're trying to go. It's going to make it very hard to find a solution that fits that need, and it's going to be very hard for your carrier to meet your needs.
Those are extremely important points. And to piggyback off of that, Rafna, how do they evaluate the risks associated with those different carrier types?
Yeah, so that's a really important aspect to what Katie said earlier as well. It's really understanding who your customer base is and what is the commodity that if you're doing wellness and supplements, there's additional risk on the compliance side. Can the carrier and the service actually, provide that? Can they do a great job into the countries that you're moving to? Is it EU? Is it Southeast Asia? So really, you need a specialty provider that can help you assess and pick the right mix of service levels and carriers, and de-risk, which is super important. Are you compliant? Because it's not just about the unit economics for that shipment, which is really important. As a shipper, you want to stay net positive, but it's also about compliance. And if you get into situations where you're non-compliant, that can be very significant in terms of fines. So being able to work with a provider that can help you with all of these components of international is the best way to think about scale. And if you're truly looking to scale international, like 40 to 60%, which is what we hear from most shippers, you need that provider that has the agility, if you will, to be able to offer the mix.
Good. Okay, so let's move to identifying rewards and opportunities from these specific carrier types. Katie, I'll start with you. What should they do?
So as far as rewards, I think it really comes down to, again, just understanding what is your business model. I think it's important to have open conversations with your carrier, making sure that you view it as a partnership. Changing a carrier or even adding a new lane can be a big undertaking for any business. Multiple departments are impacted. It's a financial risk. So making sure that the relationship you're establishing with your carrier is really going to be a huge component here. I think Timur just mentioned, kind of circling back a bit as far as testing. So testing is really, again, a good way to understand and make sure that your needs are being met. And then if they're not being met, those are the opportunities to have those open conversations, so that if something needs to pivot, something needs to adjust, that everybody has full transparency and can make those changes as you're going forward, instead of fast forward 6 months and there's a mess, you have a poor customer experience, operationally you need to make a change quickly instead of without the planning and the time that's needed. So I definitely think making sure you're understanding, you're testing, and just viewing your business as a holistic approach instead of I'm trying to add a quick lane how can I have a few extra packages?
Yeah. And Timur, you have something a little different that once you mentioned it, it has stuck with us. But there are also some questions that you want to ask. So I'm just going to ask you to tell us what are those questions and what is your little tidbit regarding the 3 C's?
Yeah, so I think, yeah, you're referring to the 3 C's, which is how I kind of summarize the opportunities and rewards, which is cost, being 1, capacity, and 3, capabilities. Cost is pretty simple, right? What is the rate advantage the carrier is going to have for you, right? Are they going to have maybe some waived accessorials, some flat rate charges, some discounts? Pretty simple to kind of put on paper. Capacity being the second, that's pretty simple as well. I mean, which can that carrier provide additional capacity? Now, in today's market, we talked at the top of the webinar that capacity is not so much of a challenge, but it's still good to have to ensure that you have a backup carrier, right, on potentially every single zip code or every single destination you're shipping to. And at the same time, capacity is important when it comes to performance and ensuring that the carrier is hitting the performance goals that you're looking to achieve. If they don't have the capacity, then they're going to have a hard time hitting those goals. Thirdly, being capability. So this is where I would ask questions like, what are some other benefits outside of cost and capacity that I'm getting? And so this could be a faster transit time, right? So compared to my incumbent, it could be that they deliver more days of the week. So my incumbent delivers Monday through Friday, but this carrier delivers on the weekends at no additional cost. And maybe some technological advantages, right? So what are some technological advantages that you have in place? So there's a lot of things that could be thrown in, but I would look to kind of define the benefits of why this carrier, how are they going to help me achieve my goals? What are they bringing to me that I don't have today? And I think those are important things to look at.
So performance and compliance, those kind of aspects we talked about earlier, right, Rafna?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so in addition to that, I would say the big thing for international, so first of all, there's 3 legs. There's first mile, there's global mile, and then there's last mile. So you really are looking, when you say performance, it is a seamless experience all the way through. So it's a door-to-door, fully tracked. That's really the expectation of consumers, and you need to have statuses all the way through. Whether it's clearing customs or, there are delays, it's all visible. So that's the performance aspect. And then alongside that, there's the complexity of trade compliance, right? So depending on the destination country and the commodities you're shipping, there could be additional restrictions around what you can ship into a country or additional paperwork that may be necessary. There's also other implications to how you do KYC, know your customer in India, or specific restrictions around tax filing in EU or in the UK. And those types of changes are very fluid. What works today doesn't work the next week. So continuously keeping on top of compliance requirements is also part of it. So your provider needs to be able to de-risk you all along the way.
You keep mentioning de-risk. Give us some examples or anecdotes that illustrate effective risk assessment.
Yeah, so there's many facets to trade compliance, but specifically import compliance into a country is a big bucket. And it's very specific to a commodity. So for example, there could be restrictions there are carrier restrictions on what the carrier can move or not move, and that is more easily understood. But trade compliance restrictions, like you cannot ship chocolate to Spain, as an example, that would be a specific you don't want to have a customer check out and then find out that they're not going to get their order. It's as simply as that. Poor experience, right? So compliance checking needs to happen right up front for certain things. Sorry, you were going to say something, Jerry?
Oh no, I was reminded of Timur's chocolate example as well when you mentioned chocolate.
Yeah, I think, I mean, that's a great example, right? I mean, we're all thinking chocolate with Halloween just being around the corner. But listen, I think when it comes to customer experience, right, and effective risk assessment, sticking with a chocolate example, let's say you're a company that ships chocolate. I mean, I think we can all agree that no one wants chocolate to melt, whether you're the company selling it or the company or the person receiving it. And so chocolate products, especially in the summer, for shipping chocolate products, transit data is important, right? So understanding the carrier's operation and understanding what their transit times are and implementing the right business rules. And I'll give you an example. Let's say a carrier delivers Monday through Saturday, but not on Sundays, and you're shipping to a 2-day point. Well, if you're going to be shipping with that carrier to a 2-day point, you have to know that they're not delivering on Sundays. And so it's a good idea to not put that package into the network on a Friday, right? Because Friday would land on a Sunday, and so delivery would take 3 days, potentially cause that chocolate to melt. And so you've got to have the right business rules built into your system. And it all starts with the understanding of the carrier and their capabilities. And then kind of weaving it into the system and testing it, ensuring that you've got the right business rules built in.
And I'll just add one more thing. The biggest piece there when we talk about risk is understanding commodities for trade. So that means classifying commodities accurately. And this is no easy task. You really need to, there's a 6-digit harmonized commodity code. So essentially saying it's a women's sweater made of wool is different than it's made of cotton. So it needs to be very specific. And how do you do that across hundreds of SKUs or hundreds of thousands of SKUs as a 3PL that is responsible for multiple shippers, or as a shipper who has merchandise that rolls in that's new. How do you classify it and get it ready for international is a big piece.
Yeah, and Jerry, I think just to circle back to what Timur just mentioned as far as understanding the carrier operation. One thing that I would suggest is also site visits. There's no better way to understand the operations of a carrier that you're working with, to actually be there, see it firsthand. I think also, just as far as risk is concerned, it's also an opportunity to put faces to names. If you have an issue with transportation, if you have an issue with customer service, who are you going to be speaking with, and how are you going to be able to get in contact with them? It's also an opportunity to see if there's something that they're doing for another customer that you might be able to take advantage of. There's just, I think we said earlier, just as far as, back to the basics, but that initial and just very simple interaction of in person, when everything that we seem to do, even just like today, online, it really goes a long way when you're trying to build out a network.
It's about partnerships, isn't it?
Indeed.
So in regards to finding success and how to leverage carrier features, tell us about carrier features. What's well known and what is more obscure? Rathna, we'll start with you.
I think I'll say that starting with well-known, you need to have a great understanding based on, as a shipper, really understand based on your vertical commodities that you're shipping, who these carriers are that can do a great job with that specific commodity. So really understanding service levels and, do they support these countries? Is it something that you can, provide a guaranteed DDP experience with? So all of those things are, what you would look at as standard things that you look for. In terms of additional obscure things, I don't know that it's so obscure anymore, but sustainability has become, brands the consumers and brands interact and with social commerce, that's the norm. And the expectation of consumers is that the brand, if they have a green ethos, that everything about them is green, for example. So having sustainability through carrier choice has also become really important. So we see that as a trend, and I think that is going to be something that we see more of. There are a lot of other specifics that are, again, it's back to commodity, which is if you're shipping perfume, it is considered accepted quantity dangerous goods, if you will. And so it needs to be, there are only certain carriers that can move it, or if you have lithium batteries, there's different restrictions. So it is always commodity driven, number one, and then you've got to apply the trade compliance aspect to it. So it's not just whether the carrier can move this shipment, but really what happens when it needs to clear customs. So really having an understanding across those two aspects, the carrier as well as the compliance.
Katie, from customs to customization. Is that
Yeah.
something to be paying attention to?
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of the things that we've seen is as customers are growing, their needs are growing, there's a lot of manual process that, is really impacting their efficiency. And one of the things that's been so helpful that we're seeing in the industry is customization. So how can you work with your partners, work with your carriers, work with your shipping platforms to see, is there a process that they're going to be able to help you automate? So if it's, supporting your multiple carriers within one platform, being able to streamline your orders, streamline your label printing, is it working with a third-party company and sending out tracking notifications? Whatever the situation might be, there's a customization, and there's also just that understanding of what your needs are that are going to be helpful as you're trying to find success in new lanes or existing lanes. Maybe it's optimizing something that you currently have, but you don't know what you don't know as far as the solutions that are available to you. But working with a carrier, even working with other customers, even other retailers within the industry to understand what they're doing and how they've been successful. It doesn't necessarily have to always be, competition as far as I'm selling, more products than you are, but also how can we optimize and what's working for you?
Speaking of optimize, how do we optimize those carrier relationships, Timur?
Well, I wanted to just touch on the point Katie mentioned first on carrier tracking notifications. I actually think that's really that's important, especially also with domestic last mile carriers. Not you had asked earlier about obscure features. I think this is one of them, because the goal at the end of the day is to get the product in the consumer's hands, right? So if a retailer is sharing the consumer contact information, for, in this case, let's say a phone number with the carrier, I think that could be really beneficial, because some carriers, not all, but some carriers have the capability to notify the recipient ahead of time, right? So, I mean, we've all gotten them, right? When we place orders, we've seen those notifications. And this enables the consumer, especially if they're placing an order with a retailer for the first time, to kind of review the order and review the delivery, make sure that it's coming to the right address, and respond if they have any questions or any delivery requirements that they need to provide to that carrier. So, at the end of the day, if it helps increase the success of the delivery, I mean, those obscure features, right? They should be discussed and evaluated, I think, ultimately. On your question about optimizing, carrier relationships, I mean, I think, and we've mentioned it, I think Ratna mentioned it, and Katie both mentioned this earlier, but, something that I always like to ensure is having the stakeholders, counterparts at both parties, the retailer and the carrier, meet one another really to understand each other's processes, to exchange contact information. So it's either, this could be a couple of things: an introduction at the local operations to local operations teams, kind of connecting the billing team and accounts payables in case there's any questions about invoices, and connecting the customer service leaders to each other so they know how to work together when questions arise. Lastly, I'll mention, I think it's important to have establish some KPIs and performance goals, right? And then once you establish them, measure them, review them regularly. So it could be a KPI around, let's say, delivery performance. So if that metric is shared on a regular basis, then that becomes a guide for your touch points between the two parties to either say, yeah, everything's going great, or if there's an improvement opportunity, then they have a discussion. But it's always around a common metric.
Very good advice. I'm glad you included that. Rafna and Katie, any tips for optimizing carrier relationships?
Yeah, I would add KPIs is a great one. I would add, really understanding the strategic goals up front. So having a QBR or, beginning of the year, here are the goals, that growth goals, here are the markets we want to enable, and the types of capabilities. So essentially your product launches, whatever else that you have as specific goals for the year, really understanding that and then tailoring what those options are with your service provider so that the right carrier mix is enabled for you. And then you have KPIs that you can measure over time and see, how are we doing against those and what, if anything, needs to change. And in addition to that, I'd say one other area is customer service or managed customer service. So how are you going to deal with issues that come up, whether it is, a clearance question, or it is, where is my parcel? It's any of those, aspects. How are you proactively, able to resolve for your customers or have your service provider do that for you? So those are all specific areas. It's good to understand upfront and then measure.
Yeah, and just to, kind of close us out here on that one, I think as far as the strategic goals up front, I also think strategic goals, Rafna mentioned the QBR, but quarterly business reviews makes everybody on the same page going forward. So checking in quarterly, making sure that as your plans have changed, that your carrier understands what plans have changed, any shifts in your particular market or shifts within the industry as a whole. I think it's important not only to have check-ins, but frequent check-ins, and it really helps make sure everybody's going to have a successful relationship.
You guys are nailing the advice. Such good advice. So as we close out, we've only got a couple of minutes left. I would just like to offer from us to the shippers and the carriers out there some closing thoughts. And mine, of course, is engage your carrier and technology partnerships very early on, as soon as you can, and collaborate with them. Ongoing collaboration. Those partnerships can be the difference in your bottom line revenue. Rafna, any quick advice?
Yeah, I would restate that be data-driven. The key to success with international is really understanding, obviously, selection of provider and working with them, as Jerry said, ahead of time. But then it's about being data-driven and understanding how these markets are converting, how consumers in those markets are engaging and with the brand, and continuously optimizing based on what you see with the data.
Timur?
I would say, look, going into peak season, make sure that the promise that you're making on the checkout page to your customers matches up to the expected delivery transit with the carrier that you're choosing to deliver the order. Because I always like to say, as the old adage goes, under promise and over deliver.
We'll close it out with you, Katie.
Awesome. So I would say be creative. Take advantage of the downtime, understand your business needs, and see what solutions your carrier can provide you, your shipping partners can provide you, and see where that leads you.
Awesome. Great advice, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. If anybody has any questions, and I'm sorry we didn't get to that, but if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the question piece and your email address, and we'll be happy to answer those via email. So some of our takeaways today: your technology partnerships are important. Remember your global audience. And as Timur said, under promise and over deliver, and be creative in your solutions. And there are some contact information. There is some contact information from our guest speakers today. Feel free to contact them if you'd like more information. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a great Wednesday.